Well, everybody, the Republicans, they're continuing their demonic plans to take away your rights, particularly rights in regards to reproductive health centered around the uterus and the penis and the balls and the fallopian tubes and the eggs and what have you. You see, dozens of independent abortion clinics closed in 2023, post-Roe v. Wade getting repealed. Dozens of independently owned reproductive health clinics shuttered in 2023, the year after the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, according to a new report from the Abortion Care Network. That's right, guys. In case you all forgot, Roe v. Wade's been gone for like a year now. The Republicans just did that the second they got a Supreme Court majority, and have very clearly indicated their plans do not stop there. We have to keep a Republican president out of the White House. We have to. We have to replace those seats with Democrats as soon as feasibly possible. The group that found that 23 independently owned clinics closed this year, on top of the 42 that shuttered in 2022, leaving over a dozen states, mainly in the American South and Midwest, without a single brick-and-mortar clinic that provides abortion. Even before Roe fell, we were the only abortion clinic in a very rural, very underserved state, with limited access to health care, and now that's all been exacerbated, said Katie Quiñones Alonso, executive director of the Women's Health Center of West Virginia. Sorry, this text is way too small. I'm going to zoom in. Like most independent clinics in the United States, the Women's Health Center of West Virginia struggled to keep its doors open after the Supreme Court decision paved the way for the state to ban abortion last year. The clinic still provides other reproductive and sexual health services, like gender-affirming care for transgender patients. We want to stay here in our community and help the patients that are still counting on us, but it's been one uphill battle after another. This is what the Republicans want. They can't win on a federal level. They can't. They can't fully ban abortion across the board. The states have too much power for this, and there are a fair amount of blue states where there will always be some level of reproductive rights guaranteed as long as the people in said states don't allow Republicans to win in the polls and flip it to a purple or a red state. However, there are a lot of red states. Land votes in this country. The only way for the Republicans to have as much of an ability to win the presidency as they do is the fact that there are so many states in the middle and the south and up in, the more rural parts of this country that are very big and rural and have very red voting populations. And because of their total amount of land, they've got a fair amount of electoral votes. They add up quite a bit to roughly equal the same amount of voting power as cities. Like New York State has less voting power than a good cluster of states in the middle of nowhere that have a much lesser population than just the city alone. Because in this country, land has a stronger vote than population, has more voting power. With that in mind, those states, those red states that are always going to be red in the middle parts of the country, those are the places where the Republicans know on a state level they can instill their values almost unchallenged, especially when they've got a Republican Supreme Court. The Women's Health Center of West Virginia is an especially crucial lifeline for low-income, uninsured people in the state who rely on the clinic for routine gynecological checkups. Those services became harder to offer after West Virginia banned abortion, slashing the clinic's revenue by roughly $500,000. That's right, most abortion clinics offer a lot of different forms of reproductive care that don't have anything to do with terminating or preventing pregnancy, and those services are taken away when these places shutter as well. This year, Alonso anticipates a roughly $350,000 budget deficit. Independently owned clinics, in contrast with bigger players like Planned Parenthood, provide the majority of abortions in the United States. According to the ACN report, indie clinics make up the majority of clinics operating in the states that are most hostile to abortion and offer the broadest range of options for patients seeking the procedure, most likely because people know Planned Parenthood. If you're in a really red state and you want to get an abortion, You don't want to go to the Planned Parenthood where there'll be 100 people protesting outside. You want to go to the really, standard named clinic that probably doesn't have as many people that know about it, right? Because a lot of people think that Planned Parenthood is the place that gives abortions, right? In the Deep South, it was always indie providers that were the ones providing abortions. Very few Planned Parenthoods existed in our region, said Robin Marty, executive director of the West Alabama Women's Center. Alabama used to have 3 Planned Parenthoods. We have just 1 now, and the others have closed, Marty said. We're still here, though. After Alabama enacted a sweeping ban on abortion, the Tuscaloosa clinic refocused on protecting newly pregnant people's access to affordable perinatal health care. And remember, guys, by the way, much of this care that is being taken away is also prenatal care. Planned Parenthood and other clinics offer ultrasounds, they offer checkups and prescriptions for medications and vitamins that might be necessary for pregnant mothers. They offer medical care for mothers that plan to carry the baby to term. Those resources are also taken away. Because remember, they're not pro-life, they're anti-woman. And while yes, I know that these bans apply to many more people than women, they're doing it specifically to hurt women. That is their goal. That is why they're doing it. The thought that is going through their minds is, I want to hurt women. But Alabama is one of 10 states that has not expanded Medicaid, leaving roughly 1 in 7 women of childbearing age without any form of health insurance. The state allows newly pregnant women to apply for Medicaid, but that requires a doctor's letter confirming the pregnancy. Quote, but of course, as these people do not have insurance, they can't get into a doctor in order to get this letter for Medicaid, Marty said. This is why we're seeing so many people in Alabama who don't have prenatal care in the first trimester. Even after a patient receives a doctor's letter confirming their pregnancy, it can take 4 to 6 weeks for the state to approve coverage. To help American healthcare, dude. American healthcare. Listen, I wouldn't necessarily say I'm a communist. Nor would I necessarily say I'm even a socialist, okay? I would probably say that my values as far as policy prescriptions lean on heavily far-left social democrat. If that makes sense. The type of reforms that I would like to see in this country are so radical that they're unfeasible in our lifetime, potentially. I mean, maybe not. Maybe they will be achieved in our lifetime. And yet, I recognize that the entire American healthcare system needs to be overhauled. And the sad thing is, there isn't as much support to do so as you think. I know, it really does suck, but this is from back during 2019 when Bernie was running in the primaries. There was a lot of discussion about why is Bernie not doing as well in the polls, right? Like, if Bernie is such a good representation of what progressives want and what Democrats want, and Democrat voters are actually so, if they're actually so unhappy with, like, Biden or whatever other Democrat candidates we get, then why is it that Medicare for All isn't that popular even among Democrats? If you look at the actual charts, if you look here, Medicare for All replacing private insurance, the rate of support among Democrats is only 64%. Among Republicans, it's 14%. Under independents, it's 39%, at least as of 2019. Now, 64% is a lot. That's true. But when you compare that to a public option, like what Pete Buttigieg or Biden or literally every other, like, mainstream Democrat runs on, 90% support. 90% support for a public option system among Democrats, as opposed to the 64% support for Medicare for All. 46% support for a public option among Republican voters. 46% among Republican voters. Do you know why the Democrats aren't catering to people like you or people like Bernie? It's because they see that 46% of Republican voters agree with the policy that Biden and most mainstream Democrats were pushing. Among independents, it's 70%. Medicare for All just isn't as popular as the alternative, being pushed by less radical politicians. And it's unfortunate, it really, really is, but you have to recognize what people will actually vote for. Bernie was not electable. It sucks to say, but he wasn't electable. He could have never won. I realize that more, like, every day as I become more politically literate. And I become more politically literate literally every day. Like, there's never a day that goes by that I don't learn something that makes me go, huh, I am more competent now in the realm of politics than I was yesterday. Every day, I am more competent in the realm of politics than I was the day before. Every day, I make sure I learn something new. Something new. Something. No matter how, seemingly unimportant it is, I make sure it's something, because it could come up someday, and it could be valuable to learn someday. But yeah, I do think that there needs to be a pretty substantial overhaul of our healthcare system. Do I agree with Medicare for All, completely eliminating the possibility of having insurance? I honestly don't. I don't know if I agree with Medicare for All. I think I like the public option better. It's the best of both worlds. I think that people who have the money and resources to afford better healthcare should be able to access it. Like, if I get cancer someday, and I've got, like, millions of dollars to afford, like, the best doctors and the best care, I should be able to afford that, and I should be able to get that, because I have the money for it, but the guy who literally lives in a box who gets cancer should also be able to get treatment. Sorry, Zan, this take is stupid. This take is stupid. I'm sorry, but it's the one the majority of Americans agree with, and you will never see what you want ever in your lifetime. And that's a good thing, because the program that you suggest would literally destroy America's economy. I'm sorry, but this has been... There is a reason why Bernie did not have as much support as you'd think he'd have. He wasn't cheated. There wasn't collusion. There wasn't, like, hacking of the voting machines. Well, in that case, you just have to make it so that doctors are legally required to work a certain amount of hours as a public healthcare provider, Njord. You realize that's a thing, right? Like, you realize that, like, there are doctors who have contracts with hospitals that require them to work a certain number of hours per year as a public free healthcare provider. So you just make policies that work around problems. Like, there would be problems. I'm not denying that there would be problems. You make policies to solve those problems. The problem is the policy to... Guys, you're gonna get so mad. You're gonna get so mad when I say this, but it's objectively true. Economists have objectively proven it, and Bernie has admitted it. Medicare for All would cost so much money. Even if we reallocated our spending from military and other forms of, like, seemingly needless spending, if we balance our budget out, even then, the tax increases on the middle class would be enormous. We would still end up, to be fair, in the long run, the middle class would still end up saving money, because otherwise they wouldn't have to save as much or spend as much on healthcare, like whether it be insurance or just out of pocket. But the fact that those taxes would have to go up the way they would, and they would objectively have to go up. Taxes going up is just something that Americans will never go for. It is too unelectable of a policy to have anything involving taxes go up. You have to avoid saying it as much as possible. Anyway, we gotta watch the Republican debates, so, listen. If you want to keep the Republicans from taking away more of your reproductive healthcare rights as you lose access to healthcare in some cases because many people just can't afford it, then please, for the love of God, volunteer with Progressive Victory. They are fighting to keep Republicans out of office and to keep them from taking away your rights. If you do !PV in chat, you'll get a link through which you can volunteer. And they've got tons of work that you can do, whether it be out on the road, out on the street, canvassing, whatever it may be, or from home doing phone baking. You don't even need to leave the house. Seriously, whatever it is, they will have work for you to do. And if you're as motivated to protect your rights as the Republicans are to destroy your rights, then you'll volunteer with Progressive Victory, and you'll do some work for them. At least show them some support. They could definitely use it, because, hell, the Republicans have a ridiculous amount of money and resources. insane amounts.